Hello, and welcome to Knowledge is Power, Hepatitis C and U. My name is Dr. Luther Virgil, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Medical Officer of the National Minority Clinical Research Association. The National Minority Research Association, or NMCRA for short, is a membership organization which is composed of about 2,000 or so medical professionals, to include medical doctors, doctors of osteopathy, nurses, nurse practitioners, and physician assistants. And at NMCRA, we address diseases of disparity, those diseases that affect minority populations in a disproportionate manner. We do this by providing individuals with education and research knowledge as it relates to those types of diseases. This program, Knowledge is Power, Hepatitis C and U, is brought to you by an educational grant which was awarded to HCV Anonymous. And HCV Anonymous is a nonprofit organization which is based in Atlanta, Georgia. This organization is composed of individuals who provide support and education to people who are infected with and affected by hepatitis C virus infection. We also want to thank Vertex Pharmaceuticals and Genentech Pharmaceuticals for providing us with the funding to do this program. The goals of this program are to provide all of us who take part with knowledge, resources, and a plan of action to prevent the spread of hepatitis C virus infection, and also to provide us with information which will allow us to increase the quality of life and length of life of those individuals who are infected by the virus. This program has been designed to be a two-part educational series. Each of the series is divided into different sections. Series Part 1 is divided into 5 sections, and Series Part 2 is divided into 4 sections. The overall objective of this program is to deal with 8 different subject matters. First, discuss how hepatitis C virus is transmitted in various populations. Also to discuss briefly the natural history and symptoms that you see in individuals who have this virus. We'd also like to discuss blood tests and radiology tests which can be used to not only diagnose the disease but also to look at monitoring it in the body. Fourth objective we'd like to cover is to review established treatments that have been in existence for a while, but also talk about some of the new treatments that may have been arrived at in order to address the issue of hepatitis C infection.
Doctor, what if I have questions? When can we ask questions?
That's a good question, if you have questions. Yes. At any point in time in this presentation, if you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Because what you may find is some of the questions that you have are questions that others who are taking part in this program might have. And in this way, we can share information, which is the ultimate goal of the reason why we're here.
All right. Thank you very much.
And we'll continue with the objectives. When we say that the 5th objective we would like to accomplish is such that when all of us finish this program, we all will have a better way of discussing methods to improve adherence to the treatments that we talked about as it relates to hepatitis. We'd also like to discuss the importance of proper nutrition because that is a key component to success. We'd like to discuss how to prevent the transmission of the disease. And then finally, we'd like to talk about some of the national and local resources that are available for individuals who have the disease or who are affected by the disease. As you know, the more we know, the better we are.
Guess that's what you mean by knowledge is power.
Absolutely. And in fact, we're going to discuss a lot of knowledge so that when we finish this program, we're going to have a lot of power. All right. The goals of Part 1 in this 2-part series are going to be, 1, to discuss what is hepatitis C. We've got to define it first. If we're going to understand it, we've got to know what it is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about transmission methods for the disease, because knowing those transmission methods will ultimately allow us to discuss how we prevent the transmission. We'll move into discussions about the natural history and presenting symptoms, and we'll talk about how its natural history leads to those particular symptoms. We'll get into blood and radiology tests, which are used to identify the presence of the infection and also to identify at what stage the infection is traveling in. And then finally, in this Part 1 of the 2-part series, we'll talk a little bit about treatments that are currently available for hepatitis C virus infection and maybe some of the things that might be coming on the horizon.
I've heard so many things about the treatments, so many horror stories.
Well, when we finish with this educational course, maybe there won't be so many horror stories, because sometimes we find out the things that scare us most are just the things that we don't understand. Okay? With that, why don't we move to the first section of Series Part 1. Okay. There you go. Hi, and this is Knowledge is Power, Hepatitis C and U. And I'm Dr. Luther Virgil, of course. And we're going to talk about the first segment of Part 1, which is, what is hepatitis C? Naturally, if we're going to talk about this infection, we got to define it. We got to understand what it is. So, the first question we say is, what is it? Well, hepatitis C infection is an infectious disease. It means it's a disease that can be spread from one person to another. And it primarily affects the liver, hence the name hepatitis. Hepatitis comes from the Greek word hepar, which means liver, and itis, which means inflammation. And so we know then that this is a disease where inflammation and scarring affects the liver. What makes it so special is that there are a number of different types of hepatitis. In fact, chemicals can cause hepatitis. And we know there's hepatitis A virus, B virus, and all the way to hepatitis F. But what's important about hepatitis C is that hepatitis C is a specific disease of its own, with its own specific disease processes. So hepatitis C is a disease that's specific and causes most of its damage to the liver. The infection often has no symptoms whatsoever, which makes it a little dangerous because you can have it without knowing that you have it. However, the long-standing chronic nature of it with inflammation and damage to the liver can eventually lead to cirrhosis, which can be very, very serious and can lead ultimately to end-stage liver disease and cancer. In some cases, those who have cirrhosis will go on to develop full failure of the liver. And not to be funny, you can't live without your liver. So if you have a failure of your liver, it's over. And others can develop swelling in some of the major blood vessels in the throat and in the stomach. And these can rupture and cause death due to bleeding. So hepatitis C is nothing to play with. It's a serious illness. Worldwide, hepatitis C is very, very common. In fact, about 130 to 170 million people have hepatitis C right now. And about 3 to 4 million people get the disease every single year. About 350,000 people each year die from hepatitis C. And I think there's a question out there.
That seems like even more than HIV.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good question and a good recognition. Yes, more individuals have hepatitis C than HIV. Absolutely. From the latest studies that I'm aware of, about 40 million people have HIV. Again, compare that to 130 to 170 million that have hepatitis C. If we really want to take a look at hepatitis C, not from a global stage, but take a look at it more as it relates to the United States, we actually see that about 35,000 to 185,000 people in the United States have hepatitis C.
35,000 or 350?
No, about 35,000 to 185,000 people get hepatitis C in the United States each year. Oh, about 350,000 people a year globally around the world die from the disease. Now, some people would say, well, Dr. Virgil, why is that such a wide number, 35,000 to 185,000? We talked about the fact that hepatitis C sometimes has no symptoms. So many people are not diagnosed with hepatitis C till late in the infection. And so therefore, they don't know they have it. So that's why we say about 35,000 to 185,000 cases occur in the United States a year. But we don't know that number very specifically. Also, in the United States, hepatitis C virus infection is the leading cause of cirrhosis and liver cancer. It's also the leading cause of liver transplant surgery in the United States. And we do recognize that about 10 to 20,000 people in the United States die of hepatitis C every single year. So, what did we say when we were defining what this is? We know this is a virus. It's a virus that causes disease in the body, can be chronic, long-lasting. And the main site that we see the damage and destruction and the symptoms occur is the liver, hence the name hepatitis. And with that, why don't we think about our next step? Transmission of this disease.